If you've ever felt scattered because you're interested in too many things, chances are someone has told you to just focus or pick a lane more times than you can count. Maybe you've started a new hobby, gotten deep into it, and then moved on to something completely different a few months later, only to feel a quiet guilt about it, like you're incapable of sticking with anything. But here's what most people get wrong about you. Having too many interests isn't a lack of discipline. It's a different kind of mind, and psychology is only now starting to understand why that mind is so rare and so valuable. For years, the cultural story has been that mastery requires narrowing down, that the people who succeed are the ones who pick one thing early and pour everything into it. But that story leaves out a whole category of people whose minds simply don't work that way, and it quietly convinces them something is wrong with them. It isn't. Today, we're going to walk through 5 traits that tend to show up in people with wide-ranging interests, and why each one, despite being misunderstood for most of your life, is actually a rare cognitive strength. Let's start with the first trait: exceptional pattern recognition across different areas of life. When you spend time in multiple different subjects, your brain starts to notice similarities between them that someone focused on just one subject would never see. Psychology shows that creativity often comes not from knowing one thing very deeply, but from connecting ideas across completely different fields. If you've ever had a strange, almost intuitive sense that two unrelated things are somehow connected, a business idea that echoes something from psychology, a lesson from art that suddenly makes sense of a relationship, that's not randomness. That's your brain drawing on a wider library of knowledge than most people have access to. What feels like being scattered is actually your mind quietly building bridges other people don't even know exist. The second trait is a highly adaptable identity. People with one central interest often build their sense of self around that single thing. When it goes well, they feel whole. When it's threatened, they feel lost. Research indicates that people with multiple interests tend to have a more flexible sense of identity because their self-worth isn't tied to one narrow definition of who they are. This means when one interest gets hard, boring, or disrupted, you don't collapse. You shift. You have other parts of yourself to lean on. What looks like inconsistency from the outside is actually a kind of quiet psychological protection, one that keeps you from ever feeling completely defined or completely lost by any single thing. The third trait is faster learning through transferable skills. Here's something most people don't realize about multi-interested minds. You're not starting from scratch every time you pick up something new. Psychology shows that skills like discipline, structure, patience, and problem solving transfer between completely unrelated fields. If you've ever noticed that learning a new skill felt oddly familiar, even though you'd never done anything like it before, that's because you weren't actually a beginner. You were bringing years of hidden experience with you, just wearing a different name. While other people are learning how to learn, you've already quietly mastered that part. The fourth trait is a natural resistance to burnout. When your sense of purpose depends on one thing, and that one thing becomes exhausting, there's often nowhere else to turn. But your curiosity works differently. When one interest starts to feel heavy or stagnant, another one is usually there to pull you back toward energy and motivation. Psychology refers to this kind of variety as a protective factor against burnout, because your emotional needs aren't concentrated in a single place. This isn't flakiness. It's a form of self-regulation you probably built without even realizing it. One that has quietly kept you going through periods where a more narrowly focused person might have completely run out of motivation. The fifth trait is being the person who connects others. Because you understand pieces of many different worlds, you're often the one who can explain a complicated idea in a way that makes sense to someone completely outside that field. Psychology refers to this as cross-domain thinking, and it's surprisingly uncommon because most people only feel confident speaking the language of their one area of expertise. If you've ever translated a technical idea into something simple for a friend, or helped two people from completely different backgrounds understand each other, that wasn't small. That was a skill most specialists never develop because they never had to. Now, here's the part that matters most. None of this means depth doesn't matter or that people who focus on one thing are doing it wrong. They're not. But if you've spent years quietly apologizing for your curiosity, feeling like you should have figured out your one thing by now, it might be time to let that story go. Your mind was never broken. It was just built differently, wired for breadth instead of narrowness. And that difference has quietly been working in your favor the whole time. If this described you, you're not indecisive, and you're not someone who can't commit, even if people have said that to you before. You're someone whose curiosity connects things other people never think to connect. And that kind of mind becomes more valuable, not less, the more complicated the world gets. If this video helped you understand your own mind a little better, consider subscribing. We post videos like this regularly, breaking down the hidden strengths behind traits that often get misunderstood, so you can start recognizing your own story with a little more compassion. You've earned that.